Well, I appreciate you inviting me, and doing this. It's, always a pleasure to chat.
Yeah, thanks for being here, man. I always like talking to you because, nothing's off limits for you.
Not really.
Yeah, and you're articulate, and also I think we share some stuff in common. One particular thing is you're a risk taker,
Yeah.
and I do too. And a lot of times people don't understand. You'll catch a lot of criticism for doing new stuff or thinking new thoughts or trying out new ideas and stuff. And so I always enjoy talking to you because that's how you are, man. You're just like, every time I talk to you, I'm like, all right, what have you been thinking about? What have you been doing? Because it's always new and different, and you're not afraid for shit to not work out.
Well, most of the time it doesn't, so you get used to that, right?
Yeah.
You gotta take, but that's part of life. I think especially where I come from, like I'm a bit of a family of innovators and risk takers in the community, and I think I just expanded upon that in the rest of my life, and traveling and, the things that I view the world up for and the different kind of projects that I would take on and things like that.
Yeah, you do travel a lot too, and do a lot of different projects. So like we have an unlimited amount of stuff we could talk about. But I'll just ask, what have you been thinking about, man? Like, what's been going on? What have you been doing? Like, I don't know. Every time I see you, you have some interesting thing going on in your head. You're like, well, let's get this out in the open.
Yeah. Well, lately, the most, I guess, current things we've been working on are new types of extracts and products for people from mushroom extracts to I guess a real popular one now is a blue lotus extract that we work with, and so we help the supply chain in that process, the companies that want to have a retail presence or a retail brand. So we get them into where the manufacturing kind of the extract all the way through to the end and packaged product, so they can get it on the shelf.
Blue lotus is a flower.
Yeah, it's a water lily actually that historically is known in Egypt and was revered for many different things, from making wine to social celebrations, and even known as a bit of an aphrodisiac. Currently people might want to say it's like microdosing, ecstasy or MDMA or something like
really?
that. So it works the same pathways as those chemicals.
No shit. I did not know that.
Yeah.
I knew it was a deeply existential representation of like Eastern spiritual stuff.
Yeah.
But it's actually physically.
Yeah, it has definitely physiological effects, and that can be therapeutic and recreational even at the same time.
God damn, I did not know that.
Yeah, so you do notice people are having a lot of fun with it. It's a fully legal product in the United States, and it's I don't think there's any real concerns with consumption of these things and stuff like that.
How did you stumble on that?
Luckily, just working with, different companies. My background, many years ago, I guess we started out in hemp and cannabis, as you know, and some of the first CBD farmers in Colorado back in 2014, 2015, and expanded upon that, and then got involved with some extraction companies. And just kind of always looked at, what are the new trends. But before I got into hemp and cannabis, mushrooms were a big passion of mine, and they have been for over 20 years. And so I've always been educating, as I've given over, 700 lectures around the world in my early years. We can talk about that later. But that really, so I got really excited about mushrooms as a young man, and then that having these access to these technologies now that allowed us to use these new biomass inputs like the mushrooms and convert and use the same kind of technologies we were using for hemp and instead apply them to other plants and other biomass, so blue lotus, hemp, these things, and use those extractions, and then also have, now that we've been able to develop the market channels, to take them to market, that allows us to experiment more. And so you're always looking for new products, and as you look at the markets in the kind of alternative business, markets that are out there, the head shops, the gas stations and places that are selling all these kind of legal recreational products, from Delta 8 to, whatever the HHCs and all these new products. They're always looking for hopefully healthier ways to consume things, but also looking for new things. And so we've always been involved in some of that newer stuff. We helped a lot of the new markets get developed as we can, and so we enjoy that.
That's cool, man. It's extremely industrious. Like a lot of people have good ideas and interested in new things and finding out about stuff, and then you always take it to this industrial level. Like the point is always to get it to market and to share it so you're always educating people and figuring out a way to sell them something.
Yes,
which is brilliant.
Yeah, I was always trained that way, I guess. Growing up, I was always studying things like sustainability and science and biology, and my family would be like, "You're crazy. You're never going to make any money. You're nuts."
Yeah.
And then my dad would always be like, "Well, how do you just convert it to money? Whatever you do, you have to convert it to money."
Yeah.
And so it also is very important in our culture that no matter what we do, no matter how good our ideas are or how good we want to be a people, if we can't generate cash flow, it's very hard to sustain that in this country.
It is. That's like the blood life of ideas in a capitalist culture. Is like if it generates money, it generates interest automatically.
Yes, and it was a sign of kind of sad because there are a lot of great ideas that don't get time of day because it takes sometimes investment to build them, to get that out. But we're not, we live in today's world, and so we have to work with today's rules.
Yeah, it's a trade-off.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to be more idealistic about it, and
Yeah, it's tough though, man. Idealistic cultures and governments just end up transferring power to tyrannical people. And I wish we could figure out a way to do that, but I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
Something to talk about a lot. We always talk about it. I've even had a group approach me, and just recently, yesterday actually, on one of the social media sites, asking about their community and their commission on sustainability, wanting to figure out a new kind of economic model for real estate development. And how do you share the equity in your community? It's very challenging. When who pays for the investment?
Yeah.
Who's going to pay for the infrastructure, and then how do you return those dollars to the people who do, and then still tie some of that equity back into the community?
Yeah, that's right. Even when a system like that's done really well, it seems like there's always an open door for the selfish person willing to take advantage of the system.
Yeah.
And that, man, if we could figure out how to stop those people without just capitalist competition, I think that's the secret, really. Because once the one person does it, then there's always a group near the bottom that was thinking about it. Now they're like, well, I'm doing it. Yeah. And then the thing's on top of itself. Maybe all these things are related, and between mushrooms and lotus and altruism, we could create a system.
Well, I think if you look at all the things that I've normally worked on over, let's say, the last 15 to 20 years, mushrooms, cannabis, some of them are all considered somewhat mind-altering, and then maybe mind-opening. Most of these things can lead to some kind of change in thinking and openness in a culture. I've lived in Colorado for the last, since 2014, 15, off and on, mostly there. Still travel quite a bit, but that's been kind of my home base, and we have to shift cultures into something a little different. Everything, things out there are becoming more and more open. People aren't going crazy. We're finding new opportunities to provide therapy for people with new molecules. We've been around for these molecules aren't new, but allowing us to use them in a new setting, I guess, or new formats. But the FDA just recently turned down the MDMA thing. But I think there's many reasons why that was. We won't get into that, but that's a different subject. But I think we those will. In the future, that's all coming. The research and the actual science that's going to come, and the results will be undeniable for the opportunities ahead as we open up more.
I agree with that. With some things, it's an easy argument, like with psilocybin.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't hardly find any research that
anything negative.
Yeah, most of it's better than aspirin.
Yes, correct. Well,
In every way.
it's safer. It's way safer than any other drug on the market.
Yeah, and it's you don't have to synthesize it.
Not at all.
It's a real plant, and you can just eat it.
Yeah, well, mushroom. I think we'd stick with the mushroom, but we should never.
Right, it's not a plant. Sorry.
Correct. I don't think we should synthesize it myself, but I know a lot of people that do. But I don't think we should.
Yeah. Why do it? It's unnecessary.
Well, it's cheaper,
Right,
and
yeah.
more controllable for people. And then and then when you get to the pharmaceutical levels, it's more dosable. Than the actual mushroom, they can synthesize and isolate, and they know exactly what they're giving you each time.
Yeah.
It's not I think the way nature always prefers it. Nature has more to it than just that isolated molecule. There's hundreds of molecules in the mushroom itself that's actually acting along with it, that's providing benefits that we're neglecting when we isolate.
Yeah, that's usually the case that is dramatically overlooked. Yeah, that there's a lot more compounds and alkaloids and other things we just didn't know were beneficial, but that are part of the. There used to be a word for that got real popular with hemp and CBD production.
An entourage effect.
Entourage, where you get like the whole plant is
Yes.
better.
Yeah.
And then they argue because it's hard to define precisely why that is. I mean, that's a very difficult, complicated thing to explain.
Yeah, we have no modern way to explain that in
Yeah.
science language, right?
Right, and we don't even really know what happens in the body after you eat stuff. I mean, really.
No.
So, yeah, that's all. It's science talking about magic. That's really what that is. I listen to it, I'm like, it sounds scientific, but fundamentally, it's a magic trick still.
Yeah, nature is for sure. I mean, when
Yeah.
you're talking about something that puts together hundreds of different, molecules in a plant and then we try to isolate 3 or 4 of them and create something and think that we are in control. It's been doing this for us for, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years, helping us co-evolve on this earth, and there's a reason for it.
Yeah, I think somewhere in that fundamental idea is the explanation why science is just as much as a religion is. It's always something like believe that you can explain something in relationship to a control group. The belief is then that explanation will also apply to the world, which is not a control group. It's an infinite variable group. Yeah, like you isolate one thing in the lab and you think you know what this thing is.
Yeah.
But you only know what it is in relationship to that control you just created. You don't know what it is when you put it in the world or inside of an animal and they send them out into the world.
Correct.
That's a faith.
Yes.
I think that's still a religion.
Yeah, we still practice, like I say, a lot of that, our research and science in that vacuum, right?
Right,
And
yeah.
that's not how it works in reality in the real world.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page with that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the lotus flower, blue lotus.
Pretty amazing history. I mean, if you really want to get into it, I'm happy to share more that I know. I don't know a lot, but I've got, for the last 2 or 3 years, I've delved into it pretty much. I probably know more about the business side than I know, say, a lot about the history or maybe even the science. But we've done a lot of research. There are 2 major molecules in the plant that we know that are the active alkaloids that we kind of understand, but we still really don't know much about the actives in the plant. There's not been a lot of research on it. There's been very little, to be honest with you. There's a great window of opportunity to do more. But the 2, I think the molecules that I think that most people are looking for, one is called nuciferin, another one is called apomorphine. A horrible name, but it has nothing to do with the opiate morphine.
Okay, yeah.
but it's just the name, but they do produce decent effects, anti-anxiety, a little bit of social openness, and things like that. We provide to several different brands, and then we've hosted dozens of Blue Lotus parties, where we will provide the extract and either put it in, say, a drink, vodka or tequila to activate it just a little bit more. But we'll supply it to 300, 400, 500 people at the parties, and they absolutely love it, and everybody has a little bit better spirits, a little happier moods, and we've had no real negative experiences with it. We make vape pens, gummies, chocolate bars, lots of different things with it that people are getting into. The one that really I learned a lot about, though, is I supply a European company, and they make skincare products. And it's they love it. The women over there think it's one of the best products.
So if you consume it, the effects are more openness feeling?
Yeah, for the most part.
Well-being, sense of well-being?
Yes. We think they go. It's a good replacement for alcohol, I think, especially in social settings.
So no hangover.
Yeah, very minimal, and it leads to more of a deeper sleep, and a lot of the anecdotal evidence say lucid dreaming, helps with that. So I have a lot of clients that like to take it normally before they go to sleep towards the end of the day, especially when they seem to smoke it.
You can smoke it?
Yeah, you can smoke it. We make vaporized carts, and we can also make blends that you smoke with.
You smoke the extract, not the plant.
Some people smoke the plant, but we also make a very
different range of chemicals.
Yes, there's different. Exactly, it is. There's still, because there's the other the biomass that's still in there that won't produce chemicals, right? When you're burning it. But we remove all of that in the extract, and then most of it's just the actives, the alkaloids and the other products, and the terpenoids and the flavonoids. It's a beautiful kind of purplish color, and works really well. Especially, I think it goes. It's going to go great in drink products. I've seen it work really well with those.
How long does it take to kick in? Or does it slow roll?
A little bit different in each one, and depending how much you take, but usually between 20 to 40 minutes, I'd say, if you eat it, and then pretty quickly if you vaporize it or smoke it. But we're finding that we're having two different effects from when we smoke it and when we eat it. They're similar to, I think, cannabis, right? If you smoke,
sounds
cannabis,
pretty normal for other things.
Yeah, exactly. Different molecules, I think, when you heat it up, and you're also getting faster in your system. So, we're finding that it's a little bit different. We're making, pure Blue Lotus vape carts right now, and then also a Blue Lotus with a cannabinoid blend vape cart for people, and they're both selling pretty well.
That's cool, man. That's so interesting. I want to try it now.
Yeah, we'll get you some.
Excellent. I was just sitting here thinking, man, it'd be cool if you could smoke mushrooms. If psilocybin didn't disappear at temperature.
Yeah.
Boy, if you could bring it on fast, that would be a trip.
Yeah, a lot of people working on it. I know a lot of people have worked on that.
Oh, that's a terrible idea.
Yeah. Well, I would say with the DMT carts are everywhere now, so that's probably worse.
Yeah, that still something I'm yet to try.
Oh, well, if you've tried the psilocybin and enjoyed it, I'm not going to say everything. It's a totally different experience, but it's definitely...
Same realm.
Well, if you have an open enough mind and you're willing to go there, it's something that I suggest most people to at least try once or twice in your life. Twice.
Yeah.
The first time's scary. The second time's a little easier.
Oh, nice.
But it doesn't take very long, last 15 to 20 minutes, and, it's, you come back and it's like nothing happened. It's just all in your head. Like, what in the hell did you just, did you just experience? And it's hard to put any words to it, and that's why I try not to explain much about it. I just tell people, the best way is to just try it.
Yeah, I've been experiencing that. I just got back from South America. We climbed through Machu Picchu and all that stuff, but then went to the Amazon, the Sachahuasi people in Ecuador, close to Peru, but it was in Ecuador. Anyway, the short version is I did the whole legitimate ayahuasca ceremonies, the rape ceremonies, and then the Amazonian mushroom ceremonies. And then everybody wants me to explain it, and I'm just like... you just got to go try it.
Yeah, it's too hard to explain. I mean, it's not really meant to be explainable.
Yeah.
Our language can't explain it. It's not designed for it.
Yeah, and it all seems to be extremely introspective and deeply personal. So even if you could explain it, like most of it's not going to apply to anybody else unless you go deep enough to where you're on the level where we're not even separate. But then the words really don't help.
No.
Like
No, not at all. I mean, I work with a psychedelic comedian, and in his skit he talks a lot about these experiences, and he tries to do his best, to portray it in words, and then with visuals. He has a very good visual aids with him.
Oh yeah.
And he's on tour right now. Actually, we'll bring him to Kokomo in September, end of September. So maybe we'll.
That'd be cool.
It'll be good for the town to hear this stuff.
Yeah. So wait, he's a comedian that like narrates his comedy around psychedelic information. He doesn't like trip and go on stage.
No, not at all. So it's all about. I think this tour is called A Better Trip, and it's about his experiences with these molecules.
Oh, that's probably great. They are funny sometimes.
Yeah. Oh no, the show's hilarious. It's 90 minutes, and he's a professional stand-up, and he'll come to town and do it. I mean, his name's Shane Moss is his name. And you can look him up, shanemoss.com. He's on tour now, doing a 200-city tour.
Oh, nice.
And,
I will.
Yeah, it's a great show. I've probably been to a dozen of them or more, We'll bring him around here, though. Like I said, in September he'll be here, so we'll get you some tickets if you want to go. It'll be a good show.
It's interesting. This conversation is leading me to have this realization. It's easy to realize how stuff changes in a culture over time, but it's easy to recognize the bad stuff or the stuff you'd make a bad judgment about. But I like to notice that the good stuff or the anecdotes or antidotes. So 10 years ago, you talk about mushrooms, you might as well be talking about heroin.
Yeah, average American culture. Right?
Yeah. And now people can go up on stage and do comedy bits about it, admit to taking it. And yeah, when I got back from, I'm a little older, so I get back from my trip to the Amazon, and I considered not even telling anyone. Yeah. Because I didn't know. People already criticized me for shit they don't understand all the time. Right. But it was different than that. Everybody's super interested and real supportive of it. People I wouldn't expect are into this.
Yeah, I think the culture's changed. The media landscape has changed around it, and you're seeing, the difference that I've seen, say, with cannabis and with, say, psilocybin in the public culture and at the federal level, government level, is you're actually getting more FDA support for trials for psilocybin and mushrooms and these things. You didn't really get that for cannabis. They're still just now allowing cannabis to be used for trials and moving it to schedules or whatever, and our government's really been reluctant on that one for some reason. But you're seeing they're allowing MDMA and ketamine on the markets, and things like that. And so you're seeing more of a wave, and especially coming out of the West Coast. I mean, where I live in Colorado, it's already been decriminalized and moving to a pathway of social acceptance, where they're going to have therapeutic clinics where you'll be able to go and consume these products most likely with some type of clinician with oversight instead of just everywhere. I mean, right now, to be honest with you, in the markets, shit's everywhere.
Yeah, you get to sign up to have a trained person, take you across the river.
Right.
That's a great idea,
right.
And I think it might be extremely timely. I imagine part of the motivation for letting these things develop is that we have this huge drug epidemic.
Yes.
And these things are the magic cure people are hoping for to some degree.
For some people, they're a very good tool. Let's say
is it the hope that will do the trick? Do you think that's letting these things become more?
The addiction and the mental health issues. I really think it's probably more mental health. Because that's the root of most of our problems in this country right now. PTSD, trauma, anxiety. And that goes deeper than just drugs. And whatever we're consuming, we all have some type of trauma and issue, and we haven't addressed mental health in this country for a long time, and so I think that's probably the bigger issue. Then the rest of it, will fall under that. Drug addictions and how to get people off and all these things. More compassionate, models and more responsible models, and things like that. But we have to address people's emotional and traumatic, issues from the root cause, and that's could
what
be
I
coming
was
from their babies or whatever, their children.
Right.
We don't know.
That's what I was thinking when you were saying that. Like, I'm afraid that Americans are just looking for another quick cure, which psilocybin is at Johns Hopkins University is shown to be like a great start,
Yes.
a huge leap for people.
Correct.
But it's not the forever answer. Like, people are still going to have to.
No, you got to make the life changes. You got to do the
Yeah.
work.
What is it? You get the message, but you still have to walk the walk, right?
Correct. I mean, you mentioned ayahuasca, which I've done, several times, and that's pretty much what it's always told me is, you know what you got to do. Now you got to do the work. If you don't do the work, it doesn't really matter. And I know plenty of people who, used ayahuasca as a substitute for their other drug addictions, so they do it, once or twice a week for 20 years. Like, you don't, well, that's, are you healing yourself? Have you gone back and done the actual work you need to do? Or do you have to keep going back to the ayahuasca every, month or whatever, every week or whatever, so that way you don't keep sliding back? Which I've seen people do that. They use that as a kind of a crutch as well.
Yeah, that's like a addiction to anti-addiction. It's confusing. But it is hard to do the work.
Yeah.
And I think that's one reason that these psychedelic drugs are so useful for some people, and why it varies in efficacy between people. One reason that I believe is that you meet yourself when you do them. Very much so. A lot of people say stuff like self-discovery, or I met, my true nature or whatever. You also get to meet like your layers of ego and personalities. If you've developed a personality that's motivated around an addiction or a fear or whatever, you get to meet that too. You face things. You have no choice. If you take enough mushrooms or something, you're going to have no choice but to face these things.
Oh, yeah.
And that reality, man, that spurs change, when things can't hide in the dark like that. You get to meet your personality and then wake up the next day and be like, oh man, is that who I want to be though? Do you think that's accurate?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I've always told people, don't take these things unless you're really ready to look in a mirror, at yourself and everything, all your decisions and everything that's happened to you in your life. Not just yours, but things that happened to you, you may not have no control over, and and things you've forgotten and repressed will come back, And with an ayahuasca, some of the things they taught us was you're probably going to also have genetic memory, things that have been going on in your DNA for generations, that if your grandparents didn't, heal something, they were bad people or whatever, and now you're going to have to deal with that too, and then until you actually, which you didn't have nothing we weren't even there,
Yeah.
But you were there because your DNA was there, so you have a genetic memory, and so now you've got to deal with those repercussions and all that trauma as well.
That's a pretty deep level. Man, ayahuasca, there's no teaspoon of sugar. How do you say, a teaspoon of sugar helps the medicine go down? Like most drugs, there's something about it that's fun. Mushrooms they can be difficult, but you will laugh at some point and it's fun.
Yeah, you'll get a little gastrointestinal distress, but
right.
Part of it.
But ayahuasca is just, boy, it's just a constant kick in the nuts, man. Like,
yes.
It is so grueling. And part of it probably because I just came off a 6-day hike through the mountains in the jungle, and my body was already broken, and probably should have waited.
Yeah.
But then I just went right into that, where the purging is part of the process. I didn't know what that meant. You don't know what that means really until
you're doing it.
Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah, it's a struggle, the first few times especially, because, it's trying to help you get through something. It is teaching you something. Yes, for sure. And then each time I've gone back and done it, I learned something different, and I mean, it's like opening more and more, But I try not to, I think you could do it once a year, once every couple of years and be fine. I don't think you got to do it that often, But I think, I've done it maybe 10 or 12 times in my life. And,
Really?
Yeah. And now I'm still.
So do you do the gringo ayahuasca or the traditional?
I've done both.
Yeah.
Done both. I've had. I've been to, like I said, I've been to over 70 countries in my life so far, and so I've experienced, in South America, but I've also had, had people flown up here in America, and one of them was even known as the Gringo Shaman. His name was Ron something was his name, I can't remember, but I had some friends fly him up, and we experienced that.
Oh, that's cool.
So, so I've done it several different times, and then one of the times I actually did, last few times I did it, I had just a private ceremony in my office. When I was still working here in town, and it was a pretty unique experience. They came in and. I had, there was some things around my office that these were a couple of Peruvian people, and they're like, you need to move this around, physical stuff, objects in the office, like, point this way, do this, that, and then we did the ceremony, and then they're like, they're like, you just need to work harder, basically, But afterwards, I come out, and then for about 2 weeks, in public, people are like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Wait a minute, like you look great, you got some kind of weird aura about you."
Yeah.
And then business goes great. I closed like $500,000 in like a week or two after that. Just being in a good mood.
Yeah.
And so you're like, well, maybe I need to do this every month.
Quarterly meeting. Here's your ayahuasca.
Right. Just for that, extra boost or whatever. But I think it's more just a state of mind.
You're right.
And trying to keep that. And then instead of going back to the bad habits that you were having before, and once you have that kind of clear pathway, you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to go get to it. You do it, and then you kind of forget, you slide, you stop, going to the gym, or you start drinking a little extra, or whatever it may be. You get distracted again, and you go back to whatever negative issues or frequencies that are holding you down.
Yeah, it kicks you out of those patterns. And that's the way I like to think about it, because you can catch yourself wanting to do psychedelics often if you look at them the wrong way. And the way I like to look at them is they're not something that does something for you. They're a compound that undoes something for you. Because the thing that is remarkable about it is already inside of you.
Yeah.
You're just covering it up and fucking it up and not using it right. And those drugs undo all that for you so you can use it properly. So I like to think of it that way, because although the psychedelics help, they're not necessary.
No, not at all.
And it's really the work you do between your trips that's important.
Yeah. But I've seen, I've seen people who've, been in their 60s, never taken a drug in their life, take a trip, and it changes their life before they realize, oh, I've been wrong, or I wasn't a very good person, or I need to go apologize to certain people, and so I think that's a good thing for them, But then I've also seen 13-year-olds take it and lose their mind and never come back, So there's a balance there somewhere.
Yeah.
Where we need to. It needs to, maybe young people shouldn't be taking them so much, and we maybe have a place where, our brains need to be more developed or something, but because it does have an effect on our brain patterns and development issues.
Yeah, it seems like a bad idea to high dose psychedelics during brain development.
Yeah, but when I was young, they were everywhere. When I was a kid in high school, they were. It was just the kid in class.
Yeah.
Some kid in class always had them,
Yeah, I did it. First time I did it, I was 17.
Yeah.
And a lot of cultures have like a coming of age ritual for the young men, maybe the women in some cultures, to where some psychedelic is part of this initiation process into manhood. I don't know. What do you think? It seems like that could be a good idea, to go into your adulthood with extreme openness.
It can make a lot of sense, especially, when you're trying to break that tie to childhood, because it's a big shift, coming. So you probably need to have some kind of, I don't know, punctuated equilibrium, I guess you would call it, where you're...
That's a great way to put it. That would punctuate the end of your childhood.
Yeah.
It's like being born the second time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it. But it'd be hard to sign your kids up for it, too, because, there's risks,
Of course. But, throughout history, raising children was a lot different than now.
Yeah, yeah. A long time ago, by the time you were 17, you were equal to a 35-year-old in today's American culture.
Well, sometimes...
as far as responsibility and maturity goes.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you were generals of armies at that age.
Yeah. God, could you imagine? Plucking a kid out of one of our high schools and being like, "You're the general."
Right. Get to it.
Yeah, there's probably very few that would enjoy that responsibility.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It'd be different. Just different times back then. Life, I don't think, was also revered as much as it is now. I mean, you can imagine the times like when, was it Genghis Khan or whatever was alive, and then you wipe out half the world's population or something, and you change the world's carbon footprint forever.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But we didn't revere life as different back then. Even though there wasn't as many people, there's way more people now than there was then.
I've seen those numbers. I had no idea. When I was studying history, I was studying such a small group of people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why nobody made that clear to me when I was young in high school or something. But it's crazy. The numbers of humans are like this.
Right. Imagine all that activity happened with so little amount of people, and look how many people are here now, and how much activity is actually happening while we're alive.
Yeah, it's almost amazing that a lot more things aren't happening.
Yeah, I almost agree with that.
If you were like a Martian doing an evaluation of us right now, you'd be like, man, this world kind of has things pretty organized.
Or distracted.
Somebody has it organized. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but as you say, as I travel, most of the world seems to be at least in our lifetime, we've lived in the 80 years of peace, right? Seems to have been pretty well organized. At least it feels that way. But it also feels like it's falling apart around us too at the same time. Just kind of strange feeling, while you're living in this somewhat peaceful time, it also feels like it's slipping away from us, and it's not going to be here forever. And the next generations are going to have a very difficult time with it.
Yeah, I think about that a lot often, because I see a lot of things going wrong. There's a lot of authoritarian and totalitarian stuff trying to ideological problems affecting the United States culture and democracy. I see those things and I'm like, oh, that's doomsday for our kind of... But then I look back over history, I'm like, everybody thought shit was going to fall apart in the 80s.
Well,
in the 70s.
Yeah.
In the 60s.
Well, every election
the
from the
50s.
beginning, that guy's the worst thing to ever happen.
Yeah.
Our democracy's going to shit.
Yeah, so I'm not sure totally if things are as bad as they look, or if that's sort of the American process. Because the American process is sort of like that because we're free. It's sort of like, culture is going to go off the rails because we can try out all kinds of new ideas.
Yeah.
And we could stick with them too long, but we learn a lot, so we innovate a lot more than other countries.
Yeah.
But the only thing that's missing, I think, that holds our culture together, it's starting to become missing, is conversation and respect for people that you disagree with.
Yeah.
And the ability to have a respectable debate and stuff. This whole emotional movement is problematic for our process.
Yeah.
Like if I'm 3 years deep in a bad idea, I want somebody to be like, bro, you are fucking up.
Yeah.
Look at these results. Here's my argument, and I want to listen to them.
Yes.
Doesn't mean I think that they're right automatically, but we have to have that conversation, or else we end up with people doing some of the stuff we see people doing right now.
Correct.
Now you've been down this rail the wrong way for 10 years, and you don't even know who you are.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we can easily get lost as a country, and forget what it took to get here, to get us here. And to protect us, and the values and the work that it takes to protect it. And I mean, there's a lot of scary things in my mind. I read, or I watched a podcast on like the state of the nuclear industry around the world, or whatever, nuclear bombs, and how as the older generation dies, the newer generation doesn't have the memory, a collective memory of these things. Right?
Yeah.
They don't even know the engineering behind them, how we're going to protect. How would you fix it if it goes wrong? How do you store it right? I mean, like we're losing that memory, and we're not training people these things.
Yeah,
and
you could say the same thing about protecting yourself against authoritarianism and totalitarianism and the bad ideas of that went wrong with communism and all those things. Yeah, I could see why younger people. Maybe that's how things move. The up and down I'm talking about is generational. But man, we have a system to pass these things on. I think it's our education system. We must not be.
That's another.
I can't evaluate it, but I remember when I was in school, because I'm old now. Yeah. When I was in school, like they were teaching that. Like here's what was dangerous about authoritarianism, totalitarianism. This is what you have to do. Free speech is important. Yep. You have to protect the guy's speech that you don't like. Yep. Like it's your responsibility to have your rights. Yep. And I get the vibe that we're just not.
Yeah, but when I was in school, they also taught you basic finances, how to balance a checkbook. They taught you home economics, whatever, how to sew. There's basic little things, shop class. You're losing all these things.
So are we losing these things?
Yeah, you're starting to see a lot of it go away. Home ec was gone years ago.
Yeah,
these are just basic things like how to balance, just basic home finances not taught in our country anymore, And so we end up with people like we are now, such large debt and such huge problems that we're going through, but that is easily solvable, But I think we've created a public, an education system for the elite, so that those that got paid, if you paid more, you got taught better, And the public education system really just wanted to create workers and employees, for the factories and things like that. But we evolved faster beyond that, especially now that with this generation, most people don't need a factory job. You can go do something else to your life, something more creative. But they weren't, the systems in place are not really teaching people for that. And that's something you have to break free on your own to get there. Hopefully you go to college and it teaches you something, but that's not happening, at our K through 12 anymore like it used to.
Yeah, from what I see from the outside looking in, anyway, the universities aren't getting it done.
No, they're really not. But again, in a capitalist society, they changed their model to being truly a capitalist and just pump out as many, degrees and make it as important as you can. You have to go to college or you're a failure, or you won't build whatever. Yeah. But like my nephews and stuff, I talk to them, and they're 15, 16 years old now, and they're wanting to know what they should do. Do you go to college? Do you not? And I went to college a little bit. I got about a year or two of undergrad in me, but I was a rare case. I got accepted into a master's program, when I was in my mid-20s, because of the work I was doing. And so I got to actually attend a master's program, but not without having to go to real college. So they see that and they're like, maybe I don't got to go to college or college. Yeah. I'm like, probably should, right? Especially if you're going after any specific kind of like engineering, or you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, something of higher level degree like that requires one. But if you want to go, be a builder, or a plumber, an architect, some other things that might, may not necessarily need to go to an actual, more expensive college and go get a more of a trade school kind of thing, and you probably have just as good of a life, if not better, today. Especially if you're entrepreneurial, because if you were a contractor today of any sort, and had any intelligence, you can make a killing right now.
Yeah, it's almost like they oversold that idea with the university, because then what happened is, everybody went to university, and now they're in oversupply.
Yep.
And tradesmen are are in high demand.
Yeah. That was funny. What was trying to remember the show? Maybe it was South Park or something. Had somebody. I don't really watch the show that often, but I watched somebody played one from the other day about just what we're talking about. And I think there's like all these people were going to like Home Depot, whatever, getting the contractors, with the mostly foreign labor or whatever, telling them to go do all the work. Then all of a sudden, those guys are millionaires, and all the lawyers and business people and whatever, all the accountants and everybody's on the picket line or at the line at the Home Depot looking for a job. Because they don't know how to do anything, right? They don't.
Yeah.
If we really change things around, or if say the shit really got bad in this country, the majority of people don't know how to plant a tomato. They don't,
real skills.
Yeah. They don't know how to build a table.
Yeah, and I don't mean real like thinking skills aren't important. It's just like at some level of animosity, they become not important, not a priority. Nobody cares if you have an attorney if people are trying to get clean water.
Exactly. Don't mean anything, when you're trying to feed your family.
Yeah. And AI threatens to disrupt thinking jobs altogether.
Yep.
So we'll have an entire nation of college-educated people that are put out of business by a calculator.
What I've always said is put people to work cleaning up the environment, and do the positive things that we haven't done before. Because right now our economy is based on destroying the environment. Almost every job that's paying harms the environment in some way. Very few jobs that are paying actually benefit the environment. So if we could shift that around to where you're paying jobs now benefiting nature in some way and the environment and regeneration, you will be able to turn the tide around. But that's been so that will have to be governments and business together figuring out how much money will I pay you to plant trees, how much money will I pay you to grow mushrooms in polluted land, how much money will we pay for you to clean the rivers up that are polluted, and stop the eutrophication. And there is a way to make that work.
A way to make it work as like a subsidized thing, do you think, or do you think you make it part of the market somehow?
You can definitely make it part of the market, but you just have to value everything and then stop subsidizing other things, right? So we want to get into like the climate change argument and things like that. People talk about carbon. Carbon is not the problem. Pollution is the problem. Carbon is fine. The pollution is true issue. So we really need to move towards what's called a zero waste and zero emissions model, or a circular economy model, if you want to really solve the problems we're talking about, of climate change and even somewhat social justice issues. But we're now, by focusing on just a couple of things like that, it's allowing industry to get away with their responsibilities. Because responsibility really goes back to the producer. They're the ones choosing the materials that goes into things. The public has really very little choice of what they get.
Yeah, that's my criticism of capitalism. Is I like it as a system compared to everything else I've studied, all the other countries I've been. It works, and it safeguards against a lot of very dangerous things. Mm-hmm. My critique of it is, damn it, there's always somebody at the top with the most amount of money who can change the rules to benefit themselves.
Yep.
That's a problem.
That's the way it's always worked.
It's a problem, and I hate it. And there will be people at the bottom that suffer. You can't do anything to ever end that. So I don't like those two features of capitalism. But it's sure better than hundreds of millions of people being killed, genocide, and subjugated.
Oh yeah. No, I don't know if we've found a system that's really. I want to say there's probably things that we can learn to make it better, and add to it. Because right now we don't live in a pure capitalist system anymore. But when we used to, I think that was probably what really built our country, and got us to where we're at. And then everything's been, like you said, the rich got in and now it's all subsidized by us. Petroleum is subsidized. The winners are subsidized, right?
Bailed out, subsidized.
Milk is subsidized. Banks are subsidized,
free.
right?
Yeah.
All these things, and then like I said, and bailed out. So these things are also negatives on us, right? These aren't the best solutions for our problems, but they're the ones that are propped up. So they're the cheapest for us, so they win.
Yeah.
So.
And I wanted to keep that full circle with what you were saying. So, like, if they want to do something extremely profitable that destroys the environment, They just have somebody change the ordinance in the area.
You can, or
Or they
you
hire attorneys and just do it anyway.
that, or you make sure that your pollution fees are cheaper than putting you out of business. So just put it as part of your operating costs. So you just pay if you get caught.
Yeah.
That's if you get caught. A lot of these companies will go to places where they have no rules and regulations. In Patagonia now they've got centers manufacturing and data centers polluting in the most pristine waters in the world. What are we doing? So do we need this? No, but we're anyways. But we have so many solutions. That's what I studied was I traveled. All these different kind of what are the solutions to our energy problems, to wastewater, to food.
What
instead
are
of being
they?
Negative. Well, I think it's looking again back to the zero emissions model, and that my mentors, a man named Gunther Pauli, taught us about, and that's using the 5 kingdoms of nature. It's plants, bacteria, algae, fungus, and animals. So things like wastewater treatment plants, things for communities, I always say go back to look at what you can actually do. There's a lot of things you can promote, but if you're a city, what are your main drains on the city, economically? And in Indiana, it's going to be wastewater and energy, right? And these are things that you've privatized or you've allowed private companies to service. In the case of Indiana, our wastewater plants are serviced by utility. It's kind of a monopoly, right? And so you have no competition with them here. You get one utility to service you in that, and they don't want to see change because these cities at the wastewater plants pay, hundreds of thousands and some of them millions of dollars a year in energy costs to operate. And most of that is just in pumping of the water, not in treating it. It's just moving it from A to B. The moving of sewage, moving of rainwater.
Yeah, that's enormous.
Yeah, it's like 80% of that budget goes to mostly just moving the water, right? Not to actually treating it. And then we have, our wastewater plant, which I know they're doing a lot of good work now, but back when I lived here, we used to, I knew a lot more about the plant than they're doing today because they've invested. Looks like they're doing some building stuff. So, but there used to be a lot of overflow and runoff. So anytime it would rain, I think it was like 1 inch or something like that. Within an hour, raw sewage would just dump into the creek constantly.
Right. Yeah.
And that was just our community, right? How many communities do that? And how many communities have been polluting and using that creek for a dumping ground? The factories along here have been doing nothing but polluting for 50 years. If you really go test that,
At least,
if you go test that water and you test the soils in there, some nasty stuff. You don't want open wounds in the water, they tell you. There's a lot of things. That's because of E. coli and because of the sewage issues.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of open septic systems that flow into it that aren't tied, in and all those things. But the wastewater plant would be the one thing to focus on almost all communities if you're asking these issues, because you can turn that from a negative into a positive. Because right now, again, it's consuming energy, it's dumping off nutrients and pollutants off the backside, and putting them into the downstream communities. And because, especially with things like pharmaceuticals and drugs, they don't treat, they just go right through. But most people are starting to figure out in America, especially, they're wanting to attend things like digesters and algae systems, which are bacteria driven and algae driven and things like that can sequester the nutrients, and be used to generate electricity. And so these type of things are solutions that I've learned around the world. I saw communities like the first island to eliminate diesel imports, and how are they doing that? How does a factory that wants to go off a grid that generates 7 million tons of waste from its distillery, what can it do? Well, you can use things like digestion and generate electricity off of that.
So you're talking about recreating the processes so they don't cause all the problems. In fact, they have benefits.
Yes.
And those answers are out there.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I remember when I was younger at IU, I was part of a wetlands biorestoration research project.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just fun. But I remember the research was unbelievable how effective just a natural wetland is at purifying water and removing toxins and waste. I mean,
It's like the best in nature.
Yeah, we sort of have this arrogance where we think if we make like a filter or a treatment plan that's man-made and synthetic, it's going to be better than nature. Not even close.
Not even close.
Like one,
especially when it comes to what the output of which one do you want to drink? You know, the one that comes out of the wetland or the one that comes out of that man-made system.
Right. It's weird. Like, what do you trust though? Like, if I poured some dirty water in wetlands, you know, and then I siphon some off the other end, I might not trust it. But I trust it coming out of the wastewater treatment plant. I think it's a perspective issue.
It is.
Because when you take like 1 square foot of wetland and see how much it can clean, I can't remember the numbers. I wish I had them to show, but like I had to like double check it. I was like, there's no way it's this productive. Mm-hmm. You know, and then now in retrospect, I'm like, well, it's got, you know, how many 100 million years of evolution working behind it. Mm-hmm. But nature, even just a normal wetland still is really good at filtering out toxins and stuff that didn't exist during just the nature by which it works.
Yeah. Well, you see there's a lot of ecological wastewater plants designed off of wetlands now, like the living machines and things like that by a guy named John Todd. Oh, yeah. You know, back in the 80s and 90s. And so, they
reverse engineered it?
Yeah. Basically, look how a wetland goes, and then they put in, you know, several different layers in a greenhouse that would be like, you know, these type of plants, then these type of plants, and these type of plants, all doing their job, filtering out something. And then at the end, you have basically potable water. You know, I think Garfield, the cartoon, has one of their systems here in Indiana. And for the last like 20 years or whatever, Garfield's been off the grid wastewater wise using this greenhouse living wetland system.
That's
pretty
cool.
Yeah.
To reinvent all of our processes.
That's mainly the key, you know, and opportunities there, and talk about a job creation opportunity, an economic development opportunity. But the hardest challenge, though, is just that when you talk about recreating things, the momentum of what's happening in these areas, especially in our country or in any country, you know, people move towards what they already know and don't like usually being innovating. So it's easier to implement some of these ideas on the peripheries, right, where people were on, you know, like the islands, you know, other poorer countries that don't have development, you know, more things that haven't made the same mistakes and already locked in.
They're not replacing something that already works.
Well, it's working, and I guess good enough, but it's not really good. I mean, I mean, there's, you know, in the environmental world, you know, less bad is not good. Right. So, you know, our system is just less bad. It's not good.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's the profit thing. You know, if you ask a company to switch out something, it all sounds expensive.
Well, then they don't know how to do it.
And unnecessary.
Right.
Yeah. And it's being decided on essentially by people in a boardroom that don't care.
Right. And most of these systems are owned by individual communities or some private companies that operate them. Like I said, the infrastructure is already there, so they don't want to change. You know, it has to become forced upon them in an economical way. Yeah, I hate the word being forced upon them. Not something like government, but not government. Economies have to be made. It has to make sense to where these technologies, right, will come in and retrofit them with their own, you know, their own momentum and the cash flows that they generate.
That's a good point. If you just make it work better and be more profitable, then people will do it.
Yes. You know, but currently, you know, most wastewater plants seem to be developed by civil engineers, which, you know, don't know much about biology, know a lot about concrete and pipes and pumps and filters, you know, and things like that. But, you know, nature itself doesn't need all those things, as you mentioned, a wetland, you know. So it all ends up in a wetland anyway. So even after we do all our treatment, it gets dumped into a river that ends up in a wetland to help finish the job anyways.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Or the Gulf.
Yeah, well, by the time the Gulf, it's the dead zone, you know. Yeah. Which is another reason, the eutrophication of the waterways is something else we should be combating. If we want to be responsible citizens, you shouldn't allow your nutrients from your community to be thrown away.
Yeah.
Those are actually valuable, right? We spend a lot of money, you know, on nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium just to flush it down the toilet and throw it away, you know, every year. And we're running out of some of these things. So when we talk about global stability politics, Where are we going to get our phosphorus from? And where do we get it now? Do you know?
Asteroids.
maybe, but we're talking, the two largest, deposits of phosphorus is, what is it, Ukraine, Russia, and then Morocco area, right? So, I mean,
there's some politicians that are like mineral, they think this is all about that.
Yeah.
The minerals.
A lot of it is. A lot of it's going to be. A lot of wars will be.
It's crazy to think that
there are fights.
The shit we're going to fight over. Yeah. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. It's stupid, but it's pretty much what we've always fought over, though. It's been some type of economic reason, and then ties to something else. I mean, very, very few wars are fought over, somebody stealing somebody's girlfriend or whatever, like the Helen of Troy story.
Apparently it's happened.
It has happened. No, that's why it exists. It does, but I think it's not as often, I think, as people might like to think. I think most of it's less romantic.
Yeah, and even in that case, it was probably the cover story for why they really wanted to invade.
Right.
Yeah. Motivations. That's a good point to bring up, though, man, because most of the stuff we're talking about requires responsible citizenry and responsible people. And, like, I don't know, this whole movement of the culture towards extreme worship of emotional states and
it's the opposite of responsibility.
And entitlement and stuff. I try not to be too judgmental. Like, I don't want to just be that old guy saying these young kids are...
Feels like we're getting old, doesn't it?
Well, I am getting old. But, so I'm trying to decide if these things are actually real problems or these are just new types of immaturity. Because when I was young, I had some bad ideas, too.
Oh, yeah.
They're different than these.
Yeah.
But they were bad.
Yeah.
And they were just an immaturity. So the question is, how bad is it?
Right. All generations seem to pick on the younger generations for, not being whatever with the time, being smart or whatever, work hard enough, whatever. I think the younger generation will be fine because they have no other choice, right? And whatever it is that they'll have to evolve into it, so we human beings are very adaptive.
They are their own future.
Yes. Now, some of them are some of the smartest kids I've ever talked to, and I think the future could be bright. I mean, it just depends on, I guess, you mentioned AI and some of these other new technologies that are coming out. What are they going to do to us, and then will we go through another war? If we go through a World War III, the world changes rapidly, and we haven't experienced that, something our culture, and our whole has kind of forgotten about, and so that would be a very rude awakening for us.
Do you think some fear and depravity would help people of that to mature, or is that a bad idea?
That statement about, what is it, something about hard times create hard men or whatever, that circular thing, right? Hard men, soft men, whatever.
They create problems.
Create good times. Hard men create good, whatever. We could be in that cycle, in our culture, because we have a generation or two of kind of people who haven't had to really have a hard life, some, the boomer generation or whatever. After that, since we haven't had a real hard wars or anything since then. They've lived a pretty wealthy and extensive, could get whatever they want kind of lifestyle.
Most of Americans.
Yeah.
I noticed that about myself when I started traveling abroad a lot. I was like, okay, I get it. I'm a spoiled person, even though I don't consider myself spoiled compared to people. Like, I grew up relatively poor and struggled, but if I leave this country, I'm spoiled.
Yeah. Well,
and I'm a spoiled person trying to figure out how to challenge myself to mature in that way. And then I meet people who are like living a difficult life, who are trying to find comfort. So it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very, very strange. I tell people a lot, since from my traveling and seeing that too, is even some of the worst off Americans today have a better quality of life than over half the world.
Yeah, but they wouldn't know it.
They would know.
Because you only understand things by comparison.
Correct, their perspective, and they're judging themselves based on their neighbors.
Yeah, they can be suffering.
Right.
Yeah, but then if you showed a video footage of a kid crying their eyes out because their video game machine got broken, and you showed it to somebody in a third world country, all they would notice is this kid's incredible bedroom, their immaculate clothes, the beautiful looking snack on their desk.
So you got everything.
You got everything you need. What are you crying about?
Turn over there and do something else.
Yeah, and nobody's shooting at you. Like,
you have clean running water, hot showers. We have a better quality of life. Even some of the poorest kind of people in America today than kings did 100 years ago or 200 years ago. The richest people alive, because they didn't have running water in their house 200 years ago, right? They didn't have antibiotics,
right? Medicine,
And so you're like, we forget about that in perspective. We're like, oh, we need more, but we judge ourselves based on what Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg's got on TV or whatever. That's like 5 people are going to get that shit. The rest of us ain't going to get that. I mean,
yeah. Should we be shooting for that?
No, probably not. That's if you're extremely lucky and want to live that kind of lifestyle. I mean, I don't want to work that hard.
No, don't. Yeah, that's what I was about to say. It doesn't even. Once you learn what it actually is, it's not even that attractive to go for.
No,
there's a level there somewhere where you have a level of security, but you also have a level of life and autonomy.
I enjoy life too much. I like I like experiencing it and traveling and eating and drinking and and having these things, and it may be too much for some people, but that's so be it. That's just life. I think we're alive. Might as well celebrate a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit's the key.
You work hard too. Don't get me wrong. Work hard too. But still go out and have fun.
Yeah, I find that to be the key for me. I have trouble. This is probably some sort of psychological problem, but I have trouble relaxing or enjoying anything unless I've first been productive.
Yeah. I go to the gym every day. That helps.
That's a good one. That's like a cheat code. You go to the gym, you're like, even if I didn't do shit else today,
right.
I did something.
Right, that's what I do. Let's go to the gym. Like, I clock out. I got to do work today.
Yes.
No. Yeah, it's all right. No, but it helps. I mean, that's what's really helped me, to be honest with you, as getting my older, is actually, hitting the gym 3, 4, 5 days a week and doing that consistently for about 5 years, and then that keeps me, I guess, motivated to work, and motivated to get better, because I can still see progress in my life in something, and certain things and all that. And as we live in a capitalist society, that's not my main motivation in life. I really am more of a change agent. I like my educational work the most. I think it's the most fun, the most opportune, the most meaningful. When you actually can, share ideas and knowledge with people that makes a difference in their life in some way. Whether that motivates them to create a company, or just teaches them to think about life in a little bit of a different perspective than they had before. And that's something I've always enjoyed doing.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's more sustainable than just chasing the furthest, most expensive thing you could get. That's a plan doomed to fail.
Yeah. It probably would be nice to have a yacht, though.
Yeah.
When I think about all that, then I'm like, if I had the shot, I would travel the world in a boat. That'd be cool.
It wouldn't be terrible.
No. Into my past work and traveling, like I've said, I've given 700 lectures. I've lectured at Yale, MIT, United Nations universities, Royal Academy of Sciences in Tokyo. I've talked a lot about sustainable development work many years ago, and it's now starting to be getting more popular, I guess. But we really haven't solved those problems, right? All those same problems that we've had 20, 30 years ago, we're still having, and the same kind of business models are prevalent, and still that momentum behind it. And so the problems have just been exacerbated for the most part, and so if we really want to, if humanity really wants to solve those solutions, solve these problems, there are technical, solutions to do. I'll solve all of it. It's just now a political and spiritual will to implement. and organizing and putting it together to make it happen. Communities can do it. You're starting to see more and more communities come out. I work with a few different good groups. One called Grow Greater Inglewood in South Side of Chicago. They've recently raised quite a few millions of dollars for the redevelopment of the South Side of Chicago through these type of projects, through sustainability, through farming, and through mushrooms, and through smart local kind of placemaking opportunities that have been neglected, especially in a part like South Side of Chicago, which is one of the worst in the country. The way we've treated it and the way it's been neglected and kind of left to kind of fall apart. It's definitely required to have this type of innovative thinking to spark a big difference. I mean, that's the place where 13-year-olds become gang leaders and things like that. You're hearing, well, we're having an advisory meeting. You're hearing gunshots, outside just right outside you, and it's pretty pressing need, I think, and then that could be done, that model could be learned from and recreated, I think, in a lot of places to start taking responsibility for some of those areas in our communities. So I think to learn from those things would be great, always, to people that want to be innovative, want to be entrepreneurs, surround yourself with the people doing it. I was from Indiana, and it was very hard in the beginning. I got to give a lot of talks, but I didn't have a lot of action. I had to actually leave the state to see the action most of the time. So I was traveling to another country, every 2 or 3 months, or I was going to another state. But whenever they legalized, hemp, our thoughts was we needed to be a part of that, and part of how hemp was one of the most sustainable plants on earth when done properly, and part of the correct supply chains. We haven't done that yet in this country, but you're going to start to see more and more of that since it's been legal, and it'll level out, and then it'll start developing the actual industrial sides over the next decade or two in this country, and globally. You're going to see more and more of that, which is exciting. That's really what I thought was going to happen or start happening back then. So we were preparing for more of the industrial applications of the plant, making building materials, plastics, textiles, and things like that. But then the market went to CBD and other slightly legal intoxicants for people, and that took over most of the hemp market. And then now you're starting to see people develop for the actual industrial supply chain, because it takes a lot longer and much larger investments to do something of that scale.
It's like infrastructure you need, but man, the results of that, I've seen a little bit of it, are incredible. Like,
yes,
building blocks and strong as steel. And
oh yeah, I've been a consultant for several companies, just biofiber out of Canada. And they make a kind of like a Lego building block. I did their what are called life cycle assessments, or their carbon footprint analysis, about how much carbon it takes to make their block, right? And so it was a program to help them raise some grant money for the Canadian government, about 10 years, probably 15 years ago now. That's a long time ago. Anyways, we got there and we helped them through, and that was. But so that product is amazing. I mean, they build structures. You can build commercial buildings out of it.
And you can grow that shit about anywhere.
Yeah, well, pretty much anywhere. From the islands, you just put in a small processing facility, and you can have your own, brick making factory instead of importing them.
I saw one plan, and I don't know how realistic this is, but it seemed pretty worked out. You could, buy a plot of land in an area where it would grow.
Mm-hmm.
You could plant it and grow it on your property, and this company would pick it up and take it to processing, and you could just grow like 3 a year or 2 yields a year, something like that. Mm-hmm. You could just grow your own house.
Yeah, I mean, there was actually my mentor wrote a book called Grow Your Own House.
Oh, really?
It was about using bamboo. You could.
I've seen that in Colombia.
Yeah, it was in Colombia.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, he did that project.
Yeah, I was up in some giant tower in Colombia. It was made strictly out of bamboo.
Yep.
And they said it was stronger than steel, and it was incredible.
Yep.
Although it sways.
Yes, that's the building.
That's why it doesn't break.
Yeah, that's the building. My mentor designed that and built it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Small. That's crazy.
Yeah. And so actually, that same building was in the World's Fair.
Really?
In 2000. Yeah.
It is remarkable.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, it's they to build that, to get that building approved and all that. They used German architects and engineers, and a German architect and a British engineer, I believe, or maybe British architect and German engineer, the other way around, and to get it approved through EU as a master building material as well. So you can, you know, so bamboo is amazing building material, and you actually can use that to grow. Structure, you know, you can grow, you know, like a little 2-story house on it. You know, it takes about, about a year, and then after the year, then you can harvest, you know, enough to, you know, every year to harvest enough for a house or two, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not like it's just growing the infrastructure of the house. You're still going to need other things, right? It's not building your whole house.
Yeah, the infrastructure's in the processing and the
Yeah. But you can grow the material and a lot of that stuff for it, and it was pretty cool. With the hemp side of it, you know, it's pretty amazing. I mean, you know, idealistically or whatnot, in the future, you know, hemp will be competitive with soy and cotton. You know, right now we have something like, you know, 80, 90 million acres of soy, you know, and I think corn, I mean, is up there too. And then cotton, I think it's like 8 or 10 million acres, you know, and so and that's just in our country, you know. So I think, you know, we should be able to get up there in that, you know, 50 million acre range, you know, with it, if we really start using it for things like car parts and building materials and the things that it should be used for. It's really what it should be done, and instead of this fight over, you know, marijuana and THC and all this stuff, we should have been using this plant all along, instead of trees and other, you know, petroleum based resources that we got. I mean, this thing can make
like the founding fathers were saying that.
Yes.
Yeah, they knew. We've known forever. It was some kind of weird.
We got arrested for smuggling the seeds in.
It was some eco-political drama that played out. I understand, right? It had nothing to do with.
In theory, it was what William Randolph Hearst, you know, the guy that owned all the newspapers, and he owned all the factories that made the papers, right, for his newspapers, and he owned all the forests.
That's what it was. He didn't want his paper replaced.
Correct. And Time magazine came out and said the next $1 billion crop, you know, and like I think it was like 1934, 35, and then like a year or two later. But what happens is what's his name? William Randolph Hearst has a cousin that's in the government. That's like was in charge of alcohol or something, prohibition.
Oh, that's right.
And then he convinced him to go after marijuana and used his newspapers to, you know, in propaganda, and they made that movie, you know, and did all
that's
this.
Right. That's right.
This
See, that's what I was talking about earlier. When there's always somebody that has all the damn money,
right,
changes the rules,
right,
and they ruin the environmental economic impact for everybody.
Yeah. Well, that's what, and I'll tell you, sadly, but this conspiracy, which isn't really a conspiracy, but the fact that the way our government treats a plant has taught me so much about how our government operates. You know, that if they will lie about this, what else will they lie about? It's pretty scary. Hate to think that way, but if they're willing to control them like this and manipulate it, and
I think it's a good idea to think that way. I mean, it was in the Declaration and in the Constitution. Like the government, the U.S. government's not the country. It's the government. The country is something else. Right. Yeah, and we shouldn't trust them. They work for us.
Should be. Well,
yeah, we give them power. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we used to have a good buffer for that. We used to have a media. They were really good.
Forgot about them.
Yeah, right. They were so journalistic and fair, and they didn't let people in government get away with much.
Something happened, and I don't remember when, but I think maybe like the 90s or something. But something changed where a media company is now in the entertainment business.
Yeah, well, the only political stuff they cover is what they're told to sell.
Yeah, whatever they want. You know, they can be based on an agenda and all that stuff. Instead of being more open, you're right. I mean, but I think there's a law change too, though. And then like it took away, so like they don't have to be telling the truth anymore. So they changed something in their charters to entertainment companies, and so they can lie. They can have all the little talk shows they want. They have all the opinion pieces they want, and they can present it as fact. And
like, how do we let that happen?
How do we let pharmaceutical marketing happen in this country? There's only like 2 countries in the world that allow it, and we're one of them.
But that's the cool thing about America. You're right about that. The cool thing about America is there's always if it keeps existing, we always have our own antidote. Like as soon as the legacy media became a propaganda machine, all of a sudden, a new media from in the internet and podcasting. Well, this is in this country, the truth can still find its way out so long as we're allowed to talk,
and we can innovate.
Yeah,
we find our ways to that pulpit or that microphone that allows us to get the word out there. That's very important.
Yeah.
So, right now, there's no local newspapers anymore. How do you get the word out to people?
Yeah, and how does people know which one they can trust? That's. I think that's why this is my theory. That's why long form media like podcasting is doing so well. Anybody can lie and can deliver a persuasive argument, but if you have a conversation long enough, you reveal yourself. The truth is there whether you're saying it or not.
Yeah.
You can convince somebody anything in a 2-minute clip. That there's nothing to criticize there. There's just a pitch. You know what I mean? But if me and you talk for an hour and a half, like, people will know where we're coming from, who we are, and how much truth are we telling, what are we up to.
Yeah.
And I think that's why people like seeing that.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I think, the podcasting and more of a conversation is the right way to do things. I'd rather see politicians do this than their little debates on stage with, like I said, their sound bites. Don't mean anything to me. That has no real meat to it or real essence. And then you see what Trump get up and just call people names. It's entertaining. I tell you that. So I understand why they changed it to entertainment. It's like WWF wrestling up there. But I don't know if it's good for our country.
No, I don't think we should be placating our attraction to dramatics.
Well, there's Jerry Springer in politics.
Yeah, with the most powerful positions in our country is a bad idea.
It's horrible, because then you end up with those people.
Yeah, the people that are best at that shit. And that's maybe not the best.
No, well,
I don't know. But I definitely don't want to get into politics.
Nope.
You did mention something earlier that we share. I don't know if we share this, but it'd be a cool maybe last thing we could talk about. Mushrooms.
Yep.
Man, not just the magic fun kind, but I was fascinated to discover at some point in my life that nobody knows shit about mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I went through school, university, I took well-rounded in biology, and everything was flora and fauna. And I even took microbiology, plant biology, all kinds of biology. Mm-hmm. And nobody knows shit about mushrooms.
No, they don't.
So I got you can see behind you, I have 6 or 7 things, including all Stamets' work, and it's fascinating to me because I didn't know. It's all like learning about a magical world.
Yeah.
And it's like aliens were living here the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
They don't operate like a plant. They're not a plant.
No.
They're actually much more like an animal.
Correct. More like us.
Yeah, more like a human.
Yeah.
And that's all fascinating. But I didn't even, I must have been in my 30s. I didn't even know the basics. I didn't know the mushroom was underground.
Yeah.
Or in the tree or whatever.
Yeah, you probably thought what you were eating was the mushroom.
Yeah, the fruit was the mushroom. And then I was like, well, what is this thing? And then you find out some of the properties and abilities it has. And it's mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, no, mushrooms are, and I'm glad you brought it up, is one of my favorite, things to talk about and subjects. And I work a lot with mushrooms and have for quite a while now. I started learning about mushrooms in in my teens, in my late 90s, and then I met my mentor Gunther Pauly, who opened my mind, and I went to mushroom farms in 20 countries. And I saw operations and what they were doing, and it was all about taking waste material. So he would take, banana fiber waste or sugar cane waste called bagasse, or he'd take, coffee waste in Colombia, which is the most successful project is in Colombia. Now they take Nescafe's coffee waste and have thousands of people growing mushrooms in Colombia, especially in the Manizales area. It's pretty exciting. So, but they've done a lot of really great work around that, and then I started, getting into advising, on mushroom companies when I was younger, and then we invested in a couple of mushroom projects, I probably helped set up a dozen mushroom companies. I gave lectures around the world, and people would set up a company in Louisville, and then they'd call it Five Fun Guys or something, and then we take the waste of Brown Foreman's distillery waste, and grow mushrooms off of it, and then I think I gave a talk in like Minnesota, and then they'd create a small mushroom thing out there. So I was spreading it around and teaching people for a while. And then we invested in a pretty significant mushroom company in southern Indiana in the early 2000s. Ended up becoming the largest, I think, company of its size around here for a while. Then it got in trouble, got busted for psilocybin production. The farmer did. Right after I helped people raise money for projects from time to time, and helped him raise about $500,000, I think, and then we bought infrastructure, autoclaves, and all these things as part of the scaling up to make it more of an industrial-sized projects. And then he gets in trouble with that. But he led on and led some really unique things, and he went more towards the psychedelic route and created one of the first psychedelic retreats in Jamaica, if not the first. So that's a different story. But then I stayed involved a lot in more regular mushrooms over the years. I kind of got out of it a little bit when I started focusing on hemp in 2015. But back then we were developing a substrate out of the waste of the hemp plant to be food for mushroom growing. So part of that circular thinking, right? And systems things, they take the waste of one and food for another. But that was exciting, back then. And so we did that. And now I know people use hemp and substrate all over the place. It was open source. I learned it, I think, from the Chinese, how they did it, And so I was lucky, for that. I was really lucky having a mentor. His exposure to mushrooms around the world, and him having a direct link to the number one Chinese mycologist in the world, was a guy named Shu-Ting Chang. And so I had a unique information, access to this information, right, as a young man, and through this network. Currently, I'm working on work with some of the larger mushroom companies in the country, and helping them develop new products and blends, like with the Blue Lotus, and mixing lion's mane and tremella, and maybe, so it opens the brain up a little more, and having some different kind of products with them, and that's going pretty well. And then I do some mushroom extracts. I have a small partner with a couple different extraction companies, and so we can send them different mushrooms to create different types of extracts, whether it's cordyceps extracts or Amanita mushroom extracts. Amanita is kind of what we've been doing a lot lately, because there's been a decent market for that, and has a nice effect. It's helping people.
I didn't know that existed. So I know in that mushroom there's a toxin or two.
Well, in theory, that's what they tell
Or is
you,
it just the
but
dose?
I think it's the myth, right? So they consider a molecule called ibotenic acid a neurotoxin, but that was in like the 1950s or 60s when they did
That's
that
just
study.
a category.
Correct, but and that's like directly injecting in rats' brains and things like that, an isolated molecule. But I don't know. I don't want to cause conspiracies and all that stuff, but Valium was released right around the same time. And this mushroom is I have found to be pretty much one of the best solutions to get people off benzodiazepines, Valium, Xanax, and these type of antidepressants.
The Amanita.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that much about it, but I do know in compound it's quite a bit different than like cubensis.
Oh, yeah, very different. So psilocybin is more of a psychedelic or hallucinogen, and Amanita is going to be what's called a GABA agonist. So it's not a hallucinogen. I guess it's not a psychedelic, because it's not working your serotonin or your dopamine levels, right? So in the classical sense of the term. Now, if you take a whole lot of them, you probably can, will see things, and think that you have some hallucinatory experiences, but it's going to be different than a psychedelic trip. So, but most of the time, it's more of an anti-anxiety, it's a pain reliever, and it helps people sleep like a baby.
The people have been eating it for 5,000 years.
It's one of the oldest, it's one of the oldest known mushrooms being used.
It's depicted everywhere. I find that interesting.
Most famous mushroom on Earth.
Yeah.
You know, the
But it's
Alice in-
surprisingly famous.
Yeah, it's the Super Mario Brother mushroom.
Yeah.
You know, it's the Alice in Wonderland. I mean, the theories behind it, you know, being Santa Claus, you know, and all these different things. You know, there's a lot of
Yeah.
cool stuff. So I've been working in that one for about 3 or 4 years now. I mean, I started consuming it about 20 years ago, and I didn't like it back then. So I only did it a couple times, and like, you know,
Yeah.
wasn't that fun for me. But
So have you cultivated that one before?
No, from my understanding, it can't be commercially cultivated. I know people who've done some small scale laboratory type stuff, but it has a symbiotic relationship with certain trees.
Trees, right? Yeah.
So, but there's plenty of it out there right now, so I don't see us over consuming.
Yeah, people are scared of it anyway.
Most people have been told to stay away from it. But yeah, now when we extract it, we also what's called decarboxylate it, so that most of that molecule's gone. You know, so
Yeah, they're just so fascinating, and I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface. Like Paul Stamets is out here screaming about all these things they could possibly do, and it turns out he was right about a few.
Yeah.
So then the government got real interested, and then
Paul's a good guy. I met him several times now.
Really?
Yeah. And so he's I like him, and I worked quite a bit with his stepdaughter as well years ago in Colorado.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
he seems extremely focused. Let's say it that way.
Yeah, he's fun. He's a good guy. I like him. You know, I mean, we're not like good friends or anything, but you know, we've hung out a few times, same conferences. First time I met him was 2001 at a Bioneers conference in California. You know, and then.
Well, he always makes me think like, what else could mushrooms do? Like we were learning, there isn't that many people involved in learning, but the few that are learn amazing shit all the time, like mushrooms that eat plastic.
Correct. There's more and more coming. I mean, so like I've worked with, I've been an advisor. I've done a lot of consulting and advising. I'll tell you about it. I'm also an advisor to one of the largest hospitality schools in the world as well, doing their mushroom curricula right now.
Oh yeah, they are so good to eat.
Yeah.
Gosh,
Yeah, it's
I
fun.
love mushrooms.
It's fun. And so we hosted dinners and events, you know, lectures, and bring in speakers. And we just did one in Austin, Texas, not too long ago. You know, we bring in a couple of famous, you know, mushroom experts, and then have them speak for a couple hours, and then we host like a mushroom dinner. You know, sometimes we do a 5 or 7 course dinner.
Oh, that's cool.
You know, so just
That's
depends
cool.
on how we do it. I'm probably going to do one here, actually, in Kokomo in September when the comedian comes in the same weekend, and try to tie something bigger to you know, the overall understanding of, you know, mushrooms and psychedelics and commerce and education, and somehow, you know, tie all that together around here. I don't know if we're ready for it yet or not, but we'll do it anyways.
Sure.
Yeah, that's what I've always done.
I like it.
And do it first before anybody else wants to, and then years later somebody else will claim it. You know, they'll be like, we've been, you know, we want, you know, we just like it was fun with the hemp industry around here, you know.
Yeah, I've noticed that about you. Like I'll hear you talking about stuff, and then like 5 years later, I hear everybody talking about it.
Yeah.
Like, how do you stay on that cutting edge? Seems like you stay a step ahead.
The only thing I would say was being with my mentor when I was younger. 2 things: my mentor and my father. You know, inspired me on those 2 things. Like my dad gave me a work ethic, you know, and a understanding of, you know, how hard it is to actually build something, you know. And then my other mentor, you know, laid out a framework, I think, for my life and for humanity, not just me, but for all of humanity needs to take it. So it's the zero emissions and blue economy philosophy, and seeing you know, being able to see the technologies in action. I mean, I've seen the factories where they make the, you know, mushroom coffins, you know, out of mushrooms to make, you know, coffins for people, you know, or packaging, right? You know, where I've seen, you know, I've been a consultant on the hemp car, you know, where we take the hemp fibers to make the body of a car, you know. And so I know that this stuff works. You know, I've been to, you know, the buildings, you know, in Sweden where they generate their own energy and grow their own food at the schools. You know, I've been to, you know, the you know, the island that eliminates, you know, petroleum imports, you know, and things like seeing in action that these things can happen. And so you know that there's always something that can be done or innovated. And then in our country, there's so much that needs to be done. So we're so far behind. It's not that hard to always be a couple steps ahead right now. You know? So it seems like I am, but I think we're behind, right?
Yeah. Right.
So it's like
because that's what it would seem like.
Yeah. So it's like I still think I was learning this stuff 20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And we're just now.
So you recognize it as important.
Yeah.
Early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what does that mean you can do about it, right? I mean, I'm just one person from Kokomo. You know, you have limited resources. You got to, as an entrepreneur, you have to take what you have available and try to make something out of it.
Yeah, it's hard enough to be a regular entrepreneur, but to be doing something new is like a whole another load.
Yep.
You start
Yep.
from scratch.
Yep.
First, you have to inform people what it is that you're even talking about. That's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
That's heavy.
Well, and I mean, think when we were in hemp in the beginning, we had everything on against us. Banks didn't want to work with us.
Yeah, that
We
was
had
weird.
16 bank accounts shut down in 1 year.
Yeah.
You know, how can you do business like that? You know, you're taking checks, credit cards, and then the bank says, nope, you're out of here. Go get another one. Nope, you're out of here.
Yeah.
I mean, and then all of a sudden, every bank wants you. You know, I mean, they're willing to loan money for hemp now, and can't, but they weren't for the first 5 years. You know, and, very difficult. You know, so I mean,
Slow to change. Political and regulation stuff, slow to change.
yeah.
That seems like an obstacle.
It is, and it is for in this country for a lot of things. Even I mean, here in Indiana, they still haven't gone. We're very unprogressive, right? We're wait 15 to 20 years to do anything. You know, which can be good or bad. You know, in a world that changes very fast, like now, it's actually harmful. You know, it's harming the economy of the state. You know, because
I've told people that before. Like most of my life, I couldn't stand the fact that the state I grew up and lived in was so far behind all the time. Because I was back then, I would have been considered pretty progressive, even though that same stance now would not be considered progressive.
Right.
But lately, the last 10 years, the last 5 years for sure, I'm like, man, I'm glad my state and our culture drags our feet, because some of this shit went off the rails so fast. Man.
Well, you can go West Coast. I mean, what are we doing? You know,
Yeah.
I got farms, projects, you know, outside of Seattle. I used to live in Portland. You know, I don't even want to go there anymore. You know, I go out there and I'm like, I almost want to cry. You're like, what have we done to ourselves?
Yeah, it shows you too the power of an idea, of ideology, how the power to do good and bad can be just.
Yeah, well, that and it shows you if you do nothing, what will happen. If you just let it go, you know, and let it go,
Right.
and then throw
Right.
all the drugs and mental health on top of it, you know, and just keep pumping over that stuff, because the drugs don't seem to be going away, and I keep pumping them, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. I think that's a consequence of cancel culture, which is a consequence of loss of media and freedom of speech and such. When you know, and I felt it too, the cancel culture. Like, we're all obligated to speak up when there's parts of our community or whatever doing really stupid shit.
Mm-hmm.
But it became difficult to speak up.
Yeah.
You would get. It was almost like Stalin's Russia around here for a little while.
Yeah.
Except you wouldn't get shot in the back of the head, but you know, they would close all your businesses and take away your kids. And
Yeah.
I was like, man, this feels like all that stuff I used to read about in Orwell.
Right.
Like, this is weird.
Right. But they're doing it willingly. Like, you know, it's not a government doing it. You know, it's society doing it to you.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no one authoritarian person to blame it on.
Yeah.
It's like a happening with somewhere.
Yeah, it's groupthink or whatever coming after people.
Yeah, groupthink. That's a good Orwellian word.
Yeah.
But then what do you do? Like, we got in a position where you couldn't say something about it.
Right.
You couldn't even just have an opinion that you disagreed with it.
No. And you know, I think a lot of it too. I mean, I'll go back to, you know, our capitalist world though, about our property rights and stuff. You know, I mean, we own property in this town. I've seen it, and luckily, we don't allow it to get that bad here. But I've seen some signs of things falling into that direction, and then it gets cleaned up a little bit. But if you try to clean it up, people get mad at you, like you said. People are on your property, and you're trying to say, hey, maybe don't put your tent in our driveway or in my front door, and then are you the bad guy? It's your.
Oh, right, that dilemma.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a real one. They try to recently around here. They're passing an ordinance that was motivated to help the police be able to deal with encampments, which we don't have a huge problem compared to most places.
Here's fine. But I've been living on the West Coast,
But that is a dilemma.
How do you get it back? How do you take it back now?
Yeah, who's the bad guy?
Yeah.
How deep should your compassion run? Enough to where you would let devastation fall on everyone in your community, just so you didn't have to be incompassionate to a small group of people? Those are tough questions.
Yeah, I just read a short passage in your book about you read an experiment on employees, letting them run around and have all the freedom, and then you realize they needed structure, and they needed some challenge in their life, because it was too easy, and then they made shit up.
Yeah, right.
That's what we're doing. Our life's too easy.
That's a great example.
We're making shit up instead of actually helping each other. We're destroying ourselves.
Yeah.
We're self-destroying, and I don't understand it, because we have all the resources in the world. We're the richest country ever.
Yeah.
We could have the best world. We could be the most cleanest, greenest, funnest place, and the smartest place, and we could all have public transportation. It could all be done easily. But it's not. None of that was hard. We've had it before.
We're in our own way.
We are.
Yeah, and that point you made just reminded me of something that I heard from Dr. Scott Irwin, who was I think he edited one of Leary's books. He's from that era, and he does integration for plant medicine in the Amazon. He's a wild, interesting, smart dude. But I was telling him about my experience with ayahuasca mushrooms and the different experiences I had and the things I thought maybe I should do to integrate that in my life. And one of them was to help people more. And he was basically like, fuck that. He's like, you don't even know what help people means.
Yeah.
If you take away their obstacles, you're stealing their victory. Yeah. You're taking everything away from them.
Take away their self-confidence.
Yeah. And that, man, it took me a while to really get that. And I'm like, ooh, that's when compassion goes too far. Yeah. You're actually hurting people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you think you're helping, right? You think, and you want to help, but that's sometimes not helping.
Yeah.
And I've learned that the hard way myself. I've run out of employees. I've had my own life treating myself certain ways, and rewarding myself when I shouldn't, or whatever. And you're like, oh shit, I screwed that up,
taking unearned rewards. Yeah, that's dangerous.
Yeah, spending the money before you got it. Right?
Yeah.
I've done it all.
Yeah. So, and I think sometimes you have to realize that you are obligated to be someone's obstacle.
Yeah.
When they're fucking up the boundaries and the rules that make this place run, we are obligated to be like, no, you can't do that. Get your tent off my porch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you need to be empowered to do that.
Yeah, you can't have cancel culture.
You can't empower the other side, right? That's the problem I've seen. When you try to clean up your own property, you get in trouble. And I was walking down the streets of Portland the other day.
I think that's dysfunctional by definition.
Yeah.
I think, that's never going to work, is it?
No. And I was walking down Portland the other day, a year or two ago, me and a buddy of mine, and I was looking at a mushroom farm. We were looking at acquiring out there, and so we're staying down there. So we go for a walk, and it's like on 4th and Burnside. We're right downtown, which I used to live in Portland. I love there, love the city. But as we're walking, we get yelled at by about like 8 people because I'm in their territory. Their tent was their territory now, and I'm on the sidewalk walking, but I'm walking like too close to them, and they're like, "Get out of my shit!"
What?
And I'm like, I didn't know I was just on the sidewalk. They're like, "Get away from my shit!" Sorry, I wasn't like not going to steal anything. No.
So they're in the old America where you could just claim some land.
Yes, right. They're like, this is my land here, and I'm like, they're like getting territorial, and then they're fighting each other over territory. I'm like,
hold on, I paid taxes for this land. Did you?
Yeah.
Let's work out these property rights. Who owns this?
Well, I went to what was it called, the Chaz Zone in Seattle, when they tried doing that like weird separation thing years ago.
What is it?
It's called Chaz, right? The community, whatever zone that they created in Seattle, on like the south side of downtown area. They kind of like created like an area, and they kind of created their own policing zone, whatever. So no police can come in for a while. It was going on for a little bit. There's big news for a while. You know, they like busted in the police station, and like they evacuated the police station, and then broke into all these little stores and businesses and shit there. And then they were trying to have their own kind of like policing squad, and they did everything wrong. You know, it was just, you know, guns come back in. You know, then they're begging the cops to come back in and help them. You know? People, you know, they think, oh, let's have anarchy and then we'll fix it, we'll make it right. No, that's not how it works. You know,
anarchy always sounds good to somebody who's never went through anything difficult.
Right.
It never sounds good to somebody who's experienced any amount of disorder or chaos.
Yeah, true anarchy requires true freedom, which requires true responsibility and accountability.
Yeah, otherwise you're just going to get free energy and anxiety and uncertainty, and yeah, you won't even be able to sleep.
No, and everybody needs to be somewhat self-independent if you want to have a true free society, right? Which is what America was meant to be.
Yeah.
In the beginning,
right.
Every man was supposed to be independent on his own, whatever, can take care of his own shit. You know, cut down your own tree for your fires or whatever, build your own, you know, hunt your own animals and things. You know, we've gotten away from that a little bit, but you know.
Yeah, maybe too far.
Yeah. But the main thing would be is just, you know, educate people and the next group, the next generation, that if anybody listens to this, whatever, that wants to maybe be a part of anything like this or innovation, sometimes you just got to get out and do it. Nobody's going to give you a blessing, right? Nobody's going to say, go do it, or it's the right idea. You know, most people will tell you you're crazy until you do it, and they'll say, yeah, I had your back the whole time, you know, or whatever. And then the other half are going to hate you, you know, once you make it, you know.
Yeah, envy.
Right. Yeah. That's the biggest killer of relationships I've come across.
Oh, my gosh. My life has been full of different size waves of different kinds of haters.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
And that's how you know you're swimming in the right waters.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good message that you leave. Like a lot of people, whether they're in grade school or college or even trade school, whatever it is, like just remember that there's a whole lot more out there than they're telling you.
Oh, yeah. And don't ever expect the government or someone else to solve your problems.
No, they are the problem.
Most of the time.
It's Reagan.
Most of the time. Not 100% of the time, but most of the time. You know, if they get involved in something, it usually gets... I've seen in my life at this point, in business enough, to see when regulation comes in, something's fucked up. And then something's going to get worse.
Yeah.
Before it gets better, you know, there's usually way overswings, you know, because nobody knows what they're doing when the government. They're not the experts, you know. Our technology is so far beyond the understanding of our politicians and our average citizens. They don't know what they're regulating.
Yeah, that's a weird disconnect.
Yeah, but it's where we're at now.
The most powerful people are the least qualified expertise.
Yeah. Over
the industries.
Yeah, well, sometimes that's a popularity contest, you know, not a meritocracy contest, you know. But I don't know the answer for that one other than pay more, you know, and have, you know, better, you know, a better lifestyle for the guy that runs the country. You know, give him a lot more money.
Well, make it an attractive job.
Yes, make it way more attractive. I'd much rather be, you know, if you're a competent guy, be the CEO of your own billion-dollar company than the head of our country. You know, I mean, you get more privacy, you get more freedom, you get less scrutiny. You know, you get all the perks of wealth and fun, and you get none of the bullshit. You know, from that. You know, but you know. Being head of the country would probably be fun.
I don't know.
For at least a day or two.
That was a problem that I'm going to have to think about. How to solve that one? I have no idea.
I don't either.
I think maybe it would be better if you paid them $0 and monitored them so they could never create a situation to benefit from their power later. Because then the only people that would sign up would be...
It'd be a tough one.
Yeah, they would be interested in for other reasons, maybe.
Yeah, be a tough one because I mean, it's just the human nature, you know. And, I mean, if you gave them away, say, hey, you can start making money 10 years after you retire or whatever, or something. But I mean, we're making, you know, I don't know, but a lot of our politicians go in not very wealthy and are coming out some of the wealthiest people in the country.
You're getting bought off.
How that happens, I don't know.
Yeah, so your theory is maybe just getting the job makes you one of the richest men in the world, so there's no motivation to be corrupted?
Well, we should pay them enough to they don't need to be corrupted, you know.
Yeah, that's a good theory.
I don't know if it works, but I would assume that's better than what they're doing now.
Yeah, the other theory I just thought of, well, I didn't think this up, by the way, is that it's sort of a monopoly, the two-ballot system.
Oh, it's horrible.
Maybe if we were required to put 6 people on there.
More would be better.
You'd have a market.
Yeah, well, more would be way better. Like, I mean, Europe has hundreds of parties. You know, you go over to the EU, I mean, they'll create a party about how you tie your shoe correctly or not. I mean, it's like, it's just crazy, you know. But I do believe we need more. But I mean, I've always called myself a green libertarian. You know, I believe that our government should level the playing field for no pollution. You know, and then get the fuck out of the way, you know, and let us do our job.
Yeah,
the military,
they subsidize stuff that needs to come up like that and then stay out of the way.
Right, or don't subsidize.
So you probably...
Stop picking and choosing the winners. Subsidies are hurting us, all right? So whenever true sustainable resources and technologies will outcompete the subsidized technologies, right? So the only reason why the subsidized technologies are winning is because they're the cheapest now, because we subsidize them.
So they're just subsidizing the wrong ones.
Exactly. But I don't think we need to subsidize any of them.
That sounds great.
A true free market.
Then we could keep our taxes.
Or use them on something else, right? Now free them up and don't
more tanks.
Spend them back on cleaning the environment, right? I mean, there was a great, Buckminster Fuller, right? It was a great mind back, you know. But he said, you know, we need to go from what killingry or whatever weaponry of killing, right, to technology of livingry, basically.
Yes.
Right. We can create. We have the ability to do that. We just got to be a little more creative and willing to value life on Earth more, and that everybody should experience a great time on Earth. You know, and we could do that. And I mean, just like with food. You know, we produce more calories today than the world needs. We just don't distribute it equitably.
Yeah. There's no evidence for the resource shortage arguments. There's no shortage other than what someone would want.
Mostly artificially created.
Yeah. There's the want instead of the need. Like if you do run the numbers as far as need and distribution goes, there's enough for everybody, plus a lot more people.
Correct.
Lots more people.
Correct.
And the more people we have, the more innovation we have to be more efficient.
Right.
And there's lots of space still. Mm-hmm. But if you take it from need to want and confuse the two, then all of a sudden we're out of shit.
Yes.
We're behind.
Correct. Correct. And then they go, to live like Americans, we need 4 or 5 Earths or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's to live with today's resource consumption patterns. You know,
change it.
Yeah. Start eating insects and algae, and stop eating cows so much. Not that don't have to not eat them at all, but integrate your diet into more of those things for even more of the world. You know, one solution for everybody's not the answer.
I do like fried grasshoppers.
They're good.
They taste like they're like crunchy French fries.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah, but you can even go so as far as grind them into protein flour and put them in anything you want. Yeah. You don't need to know what they are. You know, I mean, all these Impossible burgers and whatever these things. I was vegetarian for 20 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I'm not now, but that's because I started working out and gym and eating protein and all that stuff going through. And then I just feel a little better, as I got older. My testosterone levels started declining, and I needed to change my diet a little bit. But no, I was pretty much, I was a vegan for about a year, maybe 18 months. I did raw food for, well, probably 3 or 4 months. And I tried a lot of weird diets in my life, you know. The best one I think I did was no wheat, no dairy, and no sugar.
Yeah.
I did that for about 3 or 4 months, you know, when I was living in Europe, and which was hard to do because they like their pasta and everything. You know?
Yeah.
So, but that was a good diet, you know. Again, no alcohol, right? Because no sugar, you know, and things like that. So, it was beneficial, you know. But then you know. But now I guess I eat meat more now, but I need more protein. So it's hard to get protein the other way.
It's true. It's hard to argue with meat unless you make an ethical argument.
Yeah, well, when I started becoming vegetarian, I was about 15 years old, and I just visited like some confined animal feeding operations and things like that. And that's what really got to me. It was really more how we raised them and treated them.
Yeah, the ethical arguments.
Yeah,
those are legit.
Yeah.
But when I started looking at the arguments for like dietary things, I'm like, all of your meat's bad. Research looks like eating too much meat's bad. But that's the case with everything.
It's with anything. Eat too much meat.
Like, yeah, eat a little strip of tuna or steak or something. It's actually extremely dense, useful, clean calories.
Correct. So I find it to be, and as I traveled, I also learned that, you know, you're not going to convince, you know, the tribal village in Africa or Brazil that they need to be vegan.
Yeah, yeah.
They wouldn't listen to me.
They might just kill you and eat you.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I would tell them, I would be like, hey, you know, if I was vegan or vegetarian, I'd tell them that, and they would bring me like a weird bird to eat.
Yeah, try this, you'll change your mind.
They didn't know. They'd be like, okay. I mean, I was in Romania. And I was staying. One time I was in Romania for a while, back in the late '90s, and I was telling them I was vegetarian. They brought me duck. You know,
they're like, yeah, we found this one in the vegetables.
yeah, they're like, that's all we know. They're like, we don't know. What, you don't eat meat?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you look at the processes. Like, I'm not a supporter anymore. I just like to look at things for what they really are. The fact that you can feed, like beef, you can feed one animal a little bit of grass and you can get that many fucking calories.
Yeah.
Does seem useful for feeding humanity.
Yeah.
But surely there's things about it that aren't good.
Yeah.
But you have to look at things comparatively. Like,
you do, and
many animals?
We get idealistic about, you know, we want, you know, free range, all these things, all this stuff, and then we forget the population of the world, right? And we forget just how big and massive the feeding operations are, and just, you know, spread that out over the land, we would need a lot, you know.
You'd have to be living with it.
Yeah, pretty much everybody.
Which is what we used to do.
Yeah, we did.
It's like a revert back to old ways. I mean, if you want free range chickens for the whole world, then people will have chickens in their yard.
Yeah,
that's it.
Then you just go grab it and kill it.
Yeah,
which is what a lot of my a lot of people in other countries do. I know a lot of friends, that's the way they would do it. They won't buy. Like, my friends live in China, and he married a Chinese girl on the south little island there in the south seas there. But he's like, Brandon, one of the things I can never get used to is when we eat chicken, because he's like, you know, the mom always brings a live one in, and I have to peel the feathers off and stuff. And I was like, I still never used to that, you know. And he's been there like 3 or 4 years, you know. But that's every time they buy their animals alive. We are used to not looking at the face of the animal. We don't want to see it.
Yeah,
we don't want to see the blood. You know, we don't want to see none of that stuff.
I met a kid recently who became a vegetarian because they went to, I think, Mexico and went to a meat market where they just hang up in the air, in the sun, with flies on them. And then beat it off, cut it off. You cook it, of course.
Yeah, but that's the way it is.
Yeah. In a lot of countries I've been to.
No refrigeration, you know, what do you do?
You save a shitload of money and impact on the environment if you don't refrigerate. But a lot of countries I've been to, there's domesticated animals, a part of the culture.
Mm-hmm.
They'll just running all over the place, goats and chickens and horse.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, I mean that's a part of their daily lives, And you see that a lot here, but it's our cats. It's our cats and dogs more, but in the city they're everywhere.
Yeah, at first it was weird for me to see
and rats.
that. Rats, yeah.
We got some pretty big rats in this country.
I had to cook that for a while.
Yeah.
That reminds me when I was in Belize. This guy was hunting one morning. I was up early walking, and he invited me to hunt with him. I was like, sure. I was walking with him for a minute. I was like, what are we hunting for? Queen's rat. It's not actually a rat, but it's some kind of animal that looks a lot like a rat. I was like, no, you can do this by yourself, man. Like I have these all over the place back home, basically. Like it's under the trash can. Right. You don't have to hunt them; you can bait them.
Right. Yeah, they'll come to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right on.
It used to seem strange to me that there was domesticated animals running around in other countries everywhere. And after I traveled quite a bit now, I realize it's strange to live in a culture to where it's strange.
Yeah. Yeah, we are so disconnected from our food in this country. We it all comes from a grocery store or a restaurant. So again, like I mentioned earlier, we don't really have very few choices in this country anymore. Like when you go to the grocery store, it's already pre-chosen for you what you get.
It is getting weird like that.
Yeah. And those choices aren't that many. There's like 30 ingredients in everything.
Yeah.
It's like 50 types of pork, 50 types of chicken, 50 types of beef. Why don't we have 50 different animals instead of, to give us all these varieties,
Yeah, it is interesting.
And so we very limited our diet compared to a lot of the world, which has more of a lateral diet, I guess, more open.
Yeah, and it's very processed.
Well,
even in a grocery, which Americans would consider like the cleanest, most natural place you could buy food.
Mm-hmm.
But our grocery stores are like 80% packaged goods.
Yeah.
And you have to like go around the outside to find the produce
Yep.
and the meat market, like this little bit. The rest of the whole giant super grocery is all manufactured, processed, preserved.
Yeah. And they think they would love to do that with the meat and some vegetables, spray chemicals on them to make them last longer, or have little tricks to make them look like they're fresher, and then preserve them for, put inks and dyes in them to make them have different colorings,
Yeah, I just had this experience with my kids recently because we grow some organic stuff in these beds out here, and we all ate these tomatoes, and it was like we hadn't tasted a tomato in years because we've been buying the ones at the grocery store.
Must have hardly any flavor or scent.
Yeah, and it just occurred to me, if they can actually taste this different, what else is missing from this genetic Frankenstein thing that I keep buying and eating?
Yeah. Grocery store wants it all to look the same. They don't care.
It's beautiful.
They don't care if you have the most flavor. That's not what or the most nutrients. That's not what they have set their targets for, right? If they did, food would look totally different.
Yeah, our tomatoes were all small and they were overly dense and they were super red, and they didn't. You'd have to have a lot of them to equal the size of the gargantuan beefsteak tomato.
Yeah. And that's strange because.
But it probably had the same amount of or more nutrients in it.
Yeah, you probably more. I would assume that because you probably had a soil minerals in here and things like that. And most of your tomatoes now are hydroponically grown throughout the year.
It's full of water,
right? That we're getting and petrochemical nutrients, and things like that, fertilizers and stuff, pesticides. No, we set up a few gardens. I remember years ago in town, urban gardens.
I remember that.
Yeah, I loved it, man. We had all the senior citizens across there would come over and help with us. It was a great thing. And then
a lot of people loved it. They even came and robbed it, didn't they?
Oh yeah. Well, I was free, so I wouldn't call it that. I gave everything away. We would just have some drunk marauders every once in a while come through and hack them.
I get that though. If I was drunk walking home and I saw this big juicy tomato, I'd be like, yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, just take the tomato. Don't hack the tree. Let them grow. But sometimes people would abuse it a little bit. But that's okay. We would just plant it again, right? That was what I wanted for the community. I wanted it free for the community, and that was a blast. But then the city bought it and made it a parking lot. And then that parking lot doesn't add a whole lot more value than a garden did. Now we don't have a garden downtown. You would think you would have replaced it somewhere, or whatever, for at least a community garden like that. There's still little pockets of them, but the most sustainable thing and the easiest economical thing for people to actually do is probably grow their own food.
Yeah,
right? I mean, and it's also maybe one of the most rebellious acts you can do.
which is weird.
It is. It is.
That's weird.
But something that, and as you travel in other countries, a lot of those places, also have gardens. All right. If you go to mostly Eastern Europe or Europe, they all have gardens in their backyard or in their balconies if they live in apartments. Right. There's always gardens. My grandparents were the same way.
Yeah.
They canned everything, ate it throughout the year.
Yeah.
We've lost that culture. My generation, my sister, my two sisters, even my mother, none of them can. Not one of them. So it's just one generation removed who did all that, and now none of them garden, none of them can, none of them do that. They all they had a job somewhere or married somebody and raised kids, but none of them do the gardening side anymore. And that's been removed from a lot of our culture. I don't know if it's looked down upon or why. It's maybe there's I can go to the grocery store. It's easier. I can just pay for it.
It certainly is easier. It's convenient.
It's maybe not as good or as healthy. Like I said, it's definitely not as tasty. Because I know when we do it ourselves, the food tastes much better.
Right, but it is a market. It seems like if the market was educated enough, interested enough, then the food producers would meet the market.
Yeah, I think
they demanded it.
Yeah,
and were willing to pay for it.
I think they would. But that's part of it too, is pay for it. It's hard to make. How is it that you go to the local farmer's market and the tomato is 5 times the price as the one at the grocery store?
It is tough.
And that one of the grocery stores grown in Chile and flew 1,300 miles.
Yeah, how does that work?
And how's it cheaper than the one right over here? I agree with that. That don't make sense. So we got to figure that the economic side of that out.
Yeah, because it's tough for people to buy groceries sometimes.
Yeah. Well, talking about the cost of groceries now, maybe there's some parity there with that. With the farmers market pricing now. I haven't thought about that, but last time I went to the grocery store, fucking prices were stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, if my shopping cart if it's going to ring up to over $400, I expect there to be some good quality food in there.
Well, it's okay, but that ain't happening right now. You can spend $400 on 4 bags of groceries today.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, it's not like it used to be. And I hate to talk about it. I feel like we're getting old, but I remember when I was younger and gas prices were 25 cents a gallon when I was a kid or whatever. I'm like, it ain't that. I'm like, I never thought they'd be where they're at today. Right?
Yeah, well, I'm not talking about groceries when I was a kid, though. I'm talking about groceries like 3 years ago.
I know.
We're a third the price.
Right. No, it's fast. How fast that's changed.
It's not supposed to move that fast.
No, that inflation shit, that's scary. But, I mean, we can't print money like we have, and expect things like this not to happen. We can only hold on for so long, you can only keep doing this and keep doing this. And the sad thing is that every time you do that, you devalue the money that people have already made.
I know. You've been to the countries. I've been to the countries where it's like $300,000 to buy dinner.
Yeah.
I'm like, well,
it's like play money at that point. What is?
How did you inflate it this much?
Yeah.
Like,
well, why even use money?
Right.
Just do something else.
And it's not like just the value of their paper money. It's destroyed their economy multiple times to get there.
Yes.
It takes food out of people's mouths. It kills generations.
Yes.
It's extremely dangerous.
Yes. It's very bad. And I mean, we're playing a risky game in this country. Very risky.
And the infrastructure is the first thing to go with countries that inflate too far. And the infrastructure of the United States is so big. If we even get behind...
Oh, we're already behind.
It's so hard.
We're already behind. We're about $3 trillion behind. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, in this country, just to keep it current across the country, not to take it to 21st level, century level technology. That's just to keep let's keep things operational. We still need to invest about $3 trillion in this country, and that hasn't been done. And that's not changed any. That's been going on for 20 years. I've been lecturing on that for 20 years.
Really?
Like, we need to invest in infrastructure. Everybody, you can go back and watch them. I'm like, it's the biggest job creator that we could ever have if done right. And the infrastructure needs it done anyway, so let's do it the right way this time. You know,
That's a hard sell if you're going to get elected.
Well, no politician can, because nobody
Yeah.
wants to spend the money.
Yeah, nobody cares.
Right, nobody cares. Like
Until
when you
it's
start
broken.
talking, exactly, until it's broken, until
Yeah.
till your toilet doesn't work, you don't care.
Yeah.
And you don't care in Kokomo that the toilets in New York City don't work, right? You know, or you don't care if they
Until it becomes your
until it
problem.
becomes a local problem.
By then, it's a huge problem.
Well, by the time it becomes a problem, that's the frog and boiling pot issue, right? I mean, now all of a sudden you're the dead frog, because you're letting everything else go around, happen, and didn't make a move,
Mm-hmm.
and so you don't, but that's how we like to be, right? Like, no, don't spend my, but that's again an educational mindset that could be, changing culture, Swedish people don't complain that much about it.
No, they don't. Scandinavian countries are doing some things right.
Right. They're mad. I mean, they do some things wrong, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But they do a few things right, too. So we can learn the best from all over the world. Is GDP the right thing to measure our, economy with? Maybe not. What about Bhutan has gross national happiness? Maybe you should think about that a little bit, Are our people happy, or are we just productive?
Yeah, well.
So.
No, get back to work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Stop talking that shit and get back to work.
Right. You're fucking things up over here, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought those are always things I've always thought about or like be interested in, right?
Yeah.
No, it can take things many different ways, but it does get really theoretical for where we're at in this country and where we're at, in this community, and how it can actually make a difference. I mean, you're building a couple battery plants here, spending a few $1 billion potentially in the community. You have an influx of South Koreans coming,
Yeah.
going to change the community. So it's going to be a lot more. 5 years from now, 3 years from now, this town's going to look a little different. And hopefully for the better. Overall, I don't know if the battery plants are the smartest investments in the world, because batteries seem to be yes then no, and that I don't think it's the most long term.
Yeah, and they're still tied to automotive, which we're overly invested in.
Very so much so, and
In this town, for someone listening, I'm not talking about everybody.
Yeah,
This town is
localized here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and I forgot about that. Sometimes when you're on a podcast,
Yeah.
I think I can see that, so I'm talking about that, but nobody else can. So.
Yeah.
But we're talking about one little town that's going through an economic shift, which is pretty exciting for a small town in the community, and
Yeah.
using potentially a new technology, but that's I don't the battery thing has much bigger issues around it, than just
Yeah, I've had two people. I've had one guy started there from the beginning, and they sent him overseas to do all kinds of training. I had him on this podcast. You'd probably find him interesting. He's a young guy, real interesting guy. But I have a friend he runs all of maintenance for that.
Okay.
And listening to him talk about it is super interesting.
Well, they're fascinating structures, and the buildings. I mean, the technology's pretty cool, but with me, this was gonna probably more political than anything. Is I hate when the government picks and choose winners. And electric cars, I rented one the other day. I ordered the Tesla truck. I'm not going to buy it, I don't think, but I ordered it in the beginning when it first came out, and then I rented one, drove across California, from Northern California to LA. And you got to stop so often, right? And you got to charge the thing. Which for I went solo, so it's okay. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't great, But if you had a family or kids or dogs and things traveling like that, it's still not quite convenient enough or quite there, for Americans to adopt.
Yeah, it'll come around, but it needs to develop in the market.
Yes, that's what I was thinking, and it should be.
Yeah.
It needs to allow the market to choose, not governments. So maybe hydrogen is better than the electric car, right? Maybe.
Yeah, you can't skip the whole process.
Right, maybe the air compressed car or whatever out there that's so why when the government gets involved, they pick and choose the winner, then we lose the competition.
And you also know there's another agenda.
Right.
Like probably because they want to lower the reliance on oil to have some sort of strategic advantage.
Right.
In the Middle East and Russia or something.
Right.
Like we'll just convert all of our cars to electric, and then we'll have a leg up in the strategy or something.
Yeah.
Those are weird games to play with everybody's life.
Correct. And they're playing a different strategic game, not where we think, because the markets are going to evolve. I mean, we used to always use whale blubber, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, that was the most used
Horses.
Energy, right? You think
We went from horses to cars just fine. It took a while.
Correct, but the market did that. The government didn't choose it.
Right.
Well, they started to get in the. That's kind of a lie. I mean, in the 1950s or whatever, the 40s, 50s, whenever, I think it was General Motors bought up all the railroad lines and public transit and shut them down. So that people had to buy cars. They lost a lawsuit about that, but
it becomes hard to define what's. Yeah, and it does seem like there's great places for the government to give a nudge, like the Roosevelt era, getting out of the Depression. It does seem like, but the problem is always when you give the government authority to do shit, you can't take it away.
They don't like giving it back.
Yeah, they're only giving it back, and then they can sell it. I can do this for you now, and that's all problems.
Yeah, it is. I
mean, especially now when there's no media to call them out on it.
No, it's an interesting world we're moving into, man. I mean, I hope our country does the right things. I mean, when I was younger, I was always like, I'm going to leave. I'm going to move. I'll retire out of here. It's going to be too stupid. But I still feel some sense of responsibility to try to make a difference. Here, talk to people or educate people or do some kind of work that changes something. But again, everybody has to start doing that, right, for it to work. Everybody's got to start taking responsibility for their own communities and their own neighborhoods and their own actions and their own jobs and their own careers and their own lives.
That's a great point. That's a great place to end. Like, man, start taking responsibility. If you want what you want, if you want to get what you want, take responsibility. If you want to live in a place that you like, take responsibility.
Yeah. It's not a good message, not a fun message. It's not a sexy message, but
it's not. But it's
the
the only one that
works. Right, it's the one that works
every time. Awesome, man. Thanks for coming and talking to me.
Hey, it's been fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's awesome to talk to you every time. Appreciate you.
Yep. Good.